Do you guys remember that movie that came out in 2014 that almost caused North Korea to bomb us and start a war? Well, if you do, just be quiet so I can talk about this. I'm a huge fan of Seth Rogen and was a big fan of James Franco before certain things came out, and I pretty much watch anything with Seth Rogen attached to it. And I found out this movie not from Seth Rogen or Twitter or hearing about actors involved. No, instead, this is how I was made aware of this movie.
North Korea is already condemning it, accusing the United States of provocative insanity, an act of war, and promising a decisive and merciless countermeasure if the U.S. supports the release of the film.
See, the film in question is The Interview, which depicts a U.S. talk show host going to interview the president of North Korea, Kim Jong Un. Not sure if I'm saying that right, but basically the plot is to secretly assassinate him, and if you look at the cast, it's obvious. This is meant to be a comedy. This is not a spy thriller about taking down North Korea and stopping nukes and all this crazy stuff, right? It's two potheads going to take a mission forced onto them by the US government, in which there's a whole plot of James Franco not even wanting to actually kill him because him and Kim Jong Un bond over Katy Perry. Well, let's just say the president of North Korea, who has murdered people for making jokes about him and is responsible for the suffering of hundreds of thousands of people, was not super pumped about this movie coming out. In fact, he was so shook about this that the North Korea National Defense Commission actually blamed the US president at the time, Obama, as the chief culprit, saying he forced Sony Pictures to distribute the movie, even going as far to say that he blackmailed the theaters into showing it. And I mean, no disrespect to North Korea, so please don't bomb me, but dude, Obama didn't have to blackmail anyone. These two guys were at the top of their career at the time. This movie was going to be shown in theaters no matter what. It's obvious Kim Jong Un was just very sad and hurt over the betrayal of the US and wanted to blame someone. Like, yeah, I'm definitely sure the president went out of his way to force Sony, a company that makes movies, to make a movie to hurt North Korea. And then, what? Forced movie theaters to show a movie? It's obvious this was a huge play by North Korea to show dominance and scare the US because they were saying all this before the movie had even come out. So just the thought of the movie coming out is what had them so nervous and ready to blame the US president. And even then, to say it's propaganda is a huge misfire, honestly, just because shows like South Park and Family Guy had been making jokes about North Korea for literally years, and there were already other films that had poked fun at North Korea and different various North Korean leaders already out. It's not like this movie was a brand new concept or anything. And so when North Korea said all this and no one cared, Sony Pictures was suddenly hacked by a group called the Guardians of Peace, and they stole about around 100 terabytes of data from their servers, which is at least like 2 installs of Fortnite with some DLC maybe. And apparently after that, they then threatened to bomb and attack any movie theaters that showed this movie, which if you remember the incident that had happened with The Dark Knight, which was only just 2 years before this, you'd understand that bombing a dark, enclosed space with limited exits is kind of a for sure way to get people to really not want to see the movie in person. So the movie's still not being out yet, and we already have Sony Pictures getting hacked. North Korea's blaming the US, making it seem like this movie was made to purposely attack them, while also threatening any US theaters that may try to, I don't know, pay rent this month or make some sort of movie at all happen and make any money. It just seems like, read the room. The movie theaters are gonna show a movie because that's how, they pay for the movie theater. And this is very interesting because you would think with how intense and anal North Korea was being about this movie, that this movie would have some insane propaganda that is for sure going to just brainwash everyone into hating North Korea, right? And honestly, no. It actually is pretty tame as far as how it displays North Korea. See, this movie is not a serious movie, so it can't really do much as far as making North Korea look like an evil dictatorship that's actually, willing to launch nukes. It has to be funny, right? And this movie is much more focused on being a comedy than anything, so it really displays the leader of North Korea, instead of maybe downright being a despicable human being, to being more of like a clumsy dork who loves Katy Perry and is also extremely insecure.
Do you think that margaritas are gay because they are so sweet?
Did someone tell you that? That margaritas are gay?
I want to talk about this movie honestly just because it's so fascinating that this film was basically making it very, very possible for some actual real life violence to occur on US land by basically North Korea's order. And honestly, I just gotta put it out there, as someone who's a huge fan of comedies, I love Anchorman, I love Superbad, I love Pineapple Express, I love all these movies, so this movie was gonna be, a movie I was gonna see at some point, right? I actually don't think this film's that great, See, as a movie, it's fine. It does what it needs to do in a way that is expected, given that it's, Seth Rogen and James Franco. It is not that much different in its humor and energy from the other films they've done together. Each movie is essentially them playing themselves just with a twist. Pineapple Express, the whole thing is that they're potheads. This is the end. The whole theme is the world is ending. The Interview, the whole theme is, North Korea and assassinating the leader of North Korea. However, the one thing I really liked about this movie and that I thought was pretty interesting was this movie displays Kim Jong Un as almost being misunderstood and misrepresented, at least for the first half. Like I mentioned before, James Franco's character actually really likes him and the two resonate with each other, and the movie almost makes you feel bad for Kim Jong Un because it shows that the leaders before him have kind of forced him to act in a certain harsh way that maybe he's even too scared of himself to really do anything. And man, I kind of get the vibe that part was kind of meant for Sony to speak out to Kim Jong Un directly and for him to see it. I also can't lie, this movie is a huge guilty pleasure for me. Like I said, I don't think this movie's great, but man, it is the most lowest common denominator of a comedy. I feel like this movie is the best turn your brain off and just laugh at stuff kind of movie, because the jokes land, but a lot of the setup is either rushed or just not really there at all. And the acting is fine, but obviously in a comedy, everyone's kind of hamming it up, And with the whole North Korea assassination plot, it gets hammed up even more because of the whole joke of killing a world leader, but kind of doing it in a super low-key way.
Kiss him, but let's just say I might give him something special with my hand.
You gonna jerk him off?
What? No, that's a double entendre.
Shut up!
And overall, the big saving grace in this film for me is Seth Rogen and James Franco. These two guys, like anything they're in, have insane chemistry here. It feels as if these two are actually real friends in life because they actually are, or they were. I'm not sure. And then obviously the actor for Kim Jong Un, Randall Park, also known as Asian Jim.
You're not Jim. Jim's not Asian.
You seriously never noticed? Hey, hats off to you for not seeing race.
He had been in a few TV shows like The Office and New Girl and in some smaller films too. But I honestly think with how intense the rollout of this movie was, he had a huge spotlight on him as he was playing a character that had directly pissed off the North Korean leader at the time. So there was a lot of focus on him, and I can't imagine going from being, not super well known to being in the direct center of a North Korean US conflict that literally had countries full on making terrorist threats. And I don't know why, but I always think about The Interview because it lives in this weird section of movies where so many people talked about it and it was just all over the place. But then I find out so many people haven't actually seen it. It's so weird. Maybe that's just the people I'm around in my group, where I live. But I just find that a lot of people haven't actually seen this movie. And you'd think with the movie with such a massive controversy that it would have had people around it running to go see it, right? But because of all these threats, Sony was kind of forced to not fully give this movie an entire rollout like it normally would have gotten. Instead, AMC, Cinemark, Cineplex, Regal, and a ton of independent theaters all refused to show the movie due to potential threats. So Sony delayed the release at that time because they had basically the entirety of US theaters refusing to show the film, which is also can you blame them? Without any real way to get this already finished movie out, Sony just released The Interview for rental or digital purchase, at least in the US, through Google Play, I think Xbox, and YouTube. And then eventually, I think a few weeks or about a month afterwards, it was also on iTunes. And they did manage to squeeze in the film to about 30 different independent and art house theaters. So it at least did get distributed through a handful of theaters, but really not enough to, warrant anything huge. It is also said that The Interview had been downloaded illegally via, torrents at least 1.5 million times in just 2 days, which is a pretty insane number for the time, and it's still even now considered a lot. And then within about 2 months, the film did end up on Netflix for digital release, and then within about another month from that, it was available for purchase as a physical copy, Blu-ray, DVD, whatever. And technically the movie did do well digitally, as it was Sony's most successful digital release at that time, making about 40 million. So while the movie wasn't a huge financial success, it managed to gain attention from the most wildest places in the world. And I find myself always thinking about just how insane this rollout was, because it was basically completely free publicity, And I imagine Sony had thought North Korea would say something, but I don't think anyone expected them to be as hostile and as trigger happy as they were. And yeah, the movie's not great. I think it's hilarious personally, but I wouldn't classify it with great comedy movies like Superbad really, that are genuinely great movies, but then also great comedies too. I think The Interview did exactly what it went out to do, and that's to make people laugh and cause some controversy. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. I do appreciate it. I do want to do bigger deep dives like this for more movies. So if you have any you want me to talk about, I kind of want to do a Lord of the Rings review thing. I've never watched Lord of the Rings, so let me know if you guys want me to talk about that. And have you seen the interview before? What are your thoughts on this movie? Is it just insane? Do you like the movie? Is it a bad movie? Let me know. And I appreciate you guys watching to the end as always, and have a good one.